Okay. I hope you can hear me now. Damn, that was stupid. Okay, so you know what happened? I have this fancy thing for I've had it for ages, and there's like a switch that comes from mic to line, and it never gets switched, but today it did, and so you can hear me. Hopefully, you can hear me now. Hopefully, I don't know. Everything is um, a little delayed. So, yep. Okay, good. Thank you, Bewolf. So, all right. Forget all that. Welcome to the stream, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Also, they just started doing a lot of noise outside my window, which means only one thing: we have our game dev stream on. This is always happening. Um, Today we're going to write some unit tests and do some natural language generation. I should probably go through like what I'm doing in these videos for those uninitiated. So I'm building this call dungeon master in your pocket, but basically it's like a simulated world that is rendered in text. It's not rendered in 3D or 2D graphics, but I'm trying to make it so that you can actually read what's happening, but it's still very simulated, right? All right, so for that we need something called natural language generation, which basically takes some state of the world or something that happened, and it describes it to the user. It's like the opposite of natural language understanding, which is what most people talk about when it gets to talk about natural language and computers. Natural language understanding, of course, is when you talk to like the assistant or Amazon Echo, and it understands you and then searches for you or whatever. Natural language generation is when you have something like, oh, you thrust at the goblin's eye, and instead of instead of it being shown as a graphic or something, we actually generate a sentence. And so for me, it's obviously very important to have natural language generation, and it's also generally really hard. The good news for me is that I kind of scoped it down. The problem for me is scoped down very nicely to basically we only use present tense, we only use English, we do a lot of the actual writing. So like it's not trying like it's not that we have like a fully 3D rendered world and then everything in it is happening, and then we try to abstract from that. It is more like, oh, we have a simulation more similar to like things like Dwarf Fortress, where it is still very much simulated, but we're not trying to draw polygons or whatever and then abstract from that, but instead we say, oh, okay, so there is an arm in this world and it is now being cleaved off by a sword. So that's a sentence that will build, right? So natural language generation. And this was one of the first things that I wrote for this particular not issue, this particular game. And as some of you know, this game has been in production, or I'm sorry, in development for a long time. It was basically one of the first Dart code that I ever wrote, maybe some 8 years ago. And again, this is a project that I have only worked on during my like off time. So it's not like I've worked on it 8 years, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, but still, it's a lot of time has passed by. So the conclusion of all this is that I have lots of code that is probably not very nice, but it still works because the natural language generation problem that I kind of arrived to is actually not that hard. So I can show you. Actually, you can even in the chat. I think if you just storyline question mark, my friendly bot is going to. Oh, you can't hear me well. Oh damn. Is this better? Is this better? Is this better? Hey. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for telling me. I did something really terrible with my flimsy hands, or flimsy, with the thing. So I had problems actually being heard. Like I was muted at first, and now hopefully I'm at the right volume. I don't know. Sorry. I still, this is my 10th stream, and I still suck at this. So I don't know if I'm learning at all. Okay. So the storyline is the class that is trying to make this all happen. I will show you how it looks like. So storyline is this thing. It's actually documented. But basically you have reports, which is things that they are like basically single sentences, simple sentences, like I take sword and goblin hits me, and you know, that kind of stuff. They're obviously they're in a way that I can actually parse them. So if the I take sword is not just the sentence itself, but it tells me what's the subject, I, or like the player, then what's the object, that's the sword, and the entity is you know, it's not just a string, it's the actual entity. So therefore we can actually say things like, oh, I take it, because we've already talked about this entity, the sword, and so we can use the pronoun for it, and the entity has a pronoun somewhere somewhere here, right? So we can even say if the report, or you know, the report, if it's positive for the subject or negative for the subject. These are important. Like you can have a thing that is basically both. Well, I mean, anyway, subject and object are enemies is something that I added at some point, which is, yeah, okay, this is used for some reason. We can also say, oh, this sentence should be like the ending sentence, so don't string it. This is the one thing that storyline does, is when you have two sentences, I see the sword and I take the sword, it will merge them into I see the sword and take it, right? Again, start sentences when you know, like, you want this to be a start of some other sentence. These are basically hints for the realizer, is what's it's called. And then you can say, well, whole sentence, which is when you're like, no, don't touch this, just this is the whole sentence, and just put it out as is, right? There are things like action threats, which is an interesting topic for another day. And yeah, and so that's just the report. And then storyline has, as you can see, a bunch of like things which we are basically, in the end, we're like search and replacing them. But as I said, it's a little more intelligent than that, but it's still search and replace. Okay, you can say verbs. You know, it can be like the report can say subject goes to object, and then we know that if it's talking about I, it doesn't say I goes to object, but it says I go to somewhere, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I guess that's it. And then we're coming to the terrible parts, which are these. There's one method that's like too long, way too long. Some of these, yeah, this one, oh man, this is like, 200. Yeah, almost 200 lines of code, which is not good. But it's also if else, you know, uh, regex is just terrible. But it works and it's tested, and I mean, for a long time I've had this thing somewhere here, like I should work on making this actually work better. The actual good way to build this would be to have like a tree of the sentence structure, to be able to say, oh, these two sentences are not exactly next to each other, but there is a pattern that we can make, which takes these sentences and puts them together into one melded sentence, and then the one that was between them we either put before or after it. Like there are so many things that we could do if we had an actual like a semantic tree of reports, and it is a little bit prepared for that, but not really. And most of it is basically we have like a list of reports, and then we just kind of put them together, and so it's not pretty. So fair warning is, first of all, if you see something here and you're like, oh, this is cool, I should do this. No, don't don't do that. It's probably a bad idea. And also, basically an apology in advance. Anyway, so let's see what the problem today is. The problem today is we can have, this is a simulated environment, we can totally have like many apples, right? Like 7 apples. And that is okay in a video game. When it's rendered in 2D or 3D graphics, you just have 7 apples, that's fine. Worst case scenario, you have 1 apple and it says 7, right? But in text, that is terrible. That is why in books you normally never have someone named the same, right? Like you never have a book, even though that happens all the time in real life. You never read in a book, oh, and then there is that other John, like there's John and then there's also John, and and John is talking to John. No, like the other John will be renamed to something else, like Jack or Miriam, and so that is better. So basically, if you render to text, as I do, you have to make sure that things are different. They are, you can talk about them as different things. Like, okay, you have 2 apples, one of them should be red and the other one should be green. You know what I mean? But again, this is a simulation, so it's very possible that you get 2 apples, and we need to make sure that storyline, that little thing here, can actually make it work. So right now, what we have for each entity that we're trying to describe, there are 2 things: the name, which here you can say like, yeah, this is Filip, gorilla. It can be an orc. That's great. It can be a sort entity, right? It has a name and it has a pronoun. Additionally, it has something we call name is proper noun, which basically says if it's something like Filip, that's a proper noun, right? And if it's wait, is it? Damn, I'm totally lost now. Where's the name is proper noun? The name of the entity is how it is primarily referred to. It is different from name is proper because it's generic. That is a long lost. Yeah, okay. A proper noun of an entity is a unique name, like John for character, or Sun for our star, or Painless for the gun in the movie Predator. Okay. If name is pronoun is true, then name is treated as a proper noun. No article, yes. So, so you can have a goblin, or you can have Guru. That's the name. And the and obviously the natural language generation needs to know what it is, because otherwise it will try to say things like the Philip is swinging his sword. It just doesn't make sense. So that's the three things that we know right now, and from them we can't do anything really. Like if we have some entity called Apple, and then some other entity called Apple, they both have pronoun it, and obviously they're not proper nouns. What do? You don't do anything. Yeah. Are we still hearing each other? I think we are. Let me see. Yeah. Beowulf says that he has turned up the YouTube sound. Hopefully that's okay. It shouldn't be needed because I turned up the volume on this thing. But again, I'm terrible at this, so do whatever you want to. You do whatever you need to do this. All right. So once again, we need to first of all we need to test. We'll create a new group which tests two objects of same name, and the first test is going to be throws assert when two names, two entities are exactly the same. That's a terrible name of a test, but whatever. So what I'm trying to do here is basically, obviously we don't want to throw in production when this happens. Like if you have two apples and both of the apples are just apple and there's nothing to differentiate them. But on the other hand, we do want to throw in development and make sure that these never happen, or at least almost never happen, right? The cool thing is that I have the unit testing environment and fuzzy testing environment that basically plays the game for like hours on end, and if there's any assertion, it will trigger at some point if there's a problem, right? Like this plays the game much faster than any player could, so it is useful. So it is useful to have many assertions, especially for things that you don't want to have. So here we'll go, and that this will be a failing test because we currently don't have any of this. Apple and also Apple. Oh man. And then we will create a report. So we need to do storyline, I guess. Storyline. And there's a setup that is for all of these tests, which will create a new storyline. What? Storyline? That's probably what we need. And then we say, okay, we created some bogus report, storyline, add subject lies next. See, this is how I make sure the grammar is right for other things, but basically here it doesn't matter. Subject lies next to object. So basically it should say something like an apple lies next to an apple, right? Which is bad. A human would say another apple or something like this, but we don't have that. So the subject is apple and the object is another apple, also apple. I think another apple is actually the correct thing to another apple. And this, we expect this to throw. Throws so this should now run. Okay, let's just run these tests. Yep. So we have a failing test. That's good. That's good. Only 24 minutes in and we have a failing test. Cool. That will be easy to fix because we basically say, okay, if you do this, if you create a report like that, we make sure that if we should make sure that any of these are different. Yeah, okay. So that would mean assert check all different, and that would be check all differentiated, check all entities differentiated, check differentiated. Naming is hard. Okay, and now we will say subject object to, we can have two objects, owner, object owner, right? Anything else? That's great. And then we create a method check differentiated, which is gonna be static. It's gonna give us a boolean. What's going on? Oh yeah, unfortunately we have to also run it. You know what, let's just extract it as check differentiated, and then here we're going to, the thing is, if you have something in an assert, it will be not put into a production code, which is how you can avoid the cost of this. So what you need to do is to have something like this. Unfortunately, you have to run it like that. which is something I don't like. I don't like when it's like that, but it's like Lisp. But anyway, so we need to return. This is void now. We are going to basically compare each other to each other. Okay, expensive. That will probably make our tests a little more expensive than whatever. So entities. I like how Dart nicely even typed the generate for this, because it knows it was a list of entities over here. You know, this was made. So check differentiated. This asserts that all entities in this report are able to be referred to in different ways. In other words, apple lies next to an apple is forbidden. Verboten. Okay. So we are going to not care about performance that much, because this is, as I said, it's in debug mode only. So we are first going to create a new list that is non-null. Final non-null. It is absolutely possible that some of these entities, most of them, will be not nulls, and we need to make sure that we don't check those. And it will be, even when we have like non-nullability, it will be possible, because this definitely is something, you know, this is where many things can be null. Many things are optional, at least. Okay, so entities where I wonder if I can do the fancy new kind of list comprehension thing for. Nah, this is fully entities where entity isn't null, to list growable false. And now we need to do ON squared thing with checking each other, I think, right? So for entity in non-nulls, we are, I mean, we should be not checking, basically this would mean that we're checking everything twice, right? Yeah, okay. I don't want to spend the whole episode on this. So, the whole stream, I mean. So, int e equals 0, e is less than non-null's length, e plus plus, and for j is 0, j. There's nothing like a nice for loop. So if E equals J, then obviously that's the same entity. We don't care, so continue. And trying to again, I'm prematurely optimizing. Just do what so if right, final A is non-nulls I, final B is non-nulls J, and if A name equals B name, return false, otherwise return true. Okay, that is not great, but it should work. Let's rerun the test. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's what we're trying to test for. Come on. How do I... How do I test for assertion errors? That's a little lame, isn't it? Does anyone know? Let's see if our internet works. So, Dart test assertion. Yes, internet is terrible when I'm streaming. Like, basically unusable. Interesting. Okay, so that failed horribly. I thought that I would just go and do this. Okay, I'll have to get back to this. Anyway, to actually do something, not just check if something is differentiated, I'll leave the test and I'll figure out how to make it. So I could just throw assertion, which would probably work, but then if I throw assertion outside assert, then that's probably not compiled off the, that's definitely not compiled away. So I need internet to figure out what's going on. What else do I do? Well, we can make sure that if we actually provide some other like ways to refer to something, it will use the other things. So the example is uses alternate names if available. And so the example would be, and we don't have any support for alternate names yet, but my example is sort and another sort. Okay, let's do rusty sort. So this one is a sort, this one is also sort, but how do we do this? We can make, so let's see, let's doodle on this. So yeah, so I have two sorts, right? And I can be like, there are some categories that I can put it in. So each sword is a weapon. So I can be like, I thrust my weapon at the goblin, right? That sounds okay. Each sword is also an item, but it's weird to say, like, we're fighting with a goblin and me saying I thrust my item at the goblin. So that's like, that's category too far to the abstract. It's similar to if we're talking about goblins, and I could say creature, I hate the creature, but I probably shouldn't say like living thing. That would be really weird. So it's item, but we're not gonna use that. It's weapon. It's a sword. And now we have two options. We could be like, this is always a string, and it always is going from the most abstract to the most concrete. So it could be a rusty sword, and it could be battered rusty sword, right? Which gives the storyline some ways to kind of go through. Also, we might say things like, hey, sword is probably the best kind of sweet spot, but you can sometimes use weapon, sometimes use sword. I don't know. Because it's weird if we only go with the first one always. That's weird, because then every time we can use weapon, we would use weapon, and it's just not how people write prose, with using just the most abstract thing, like the creature. No, the goblin comes, right? Okay, so we do have some sweet spot here. We also don't never want to always use the most specific ones, because that's also something that people don't do. They don't say always again and again better rusty sword. The other option was to have basically like a tree. Like you have weapon, and that's a sword and rusty sword, but it's also weapon, sword, scimitar, rusty scimitar. You know what I mean? Like you can, at each of these little arrows, you can have different ways to go. And I'm trying to figure out, it's really hard to figure it out kind of without thinking too deeply, and I don't want to spend 2 hours on a stream just thinking. I think it's okay to just go with the first one. Yeah. Okay, let's see it with the goblin. This is, by the way, like one of the ways to like doodling this instead of just coding is a lot better, because when I get coding, I immediately go into solving problems that are much lower level than I should be worrying about. So this time it's a living thing, creature, goblin. It could be something like the young goblin. Which brings me to, we could have like categories. So it would be goblin, that's the sweet spot, that's the name. Then we have categories, that's creature, warrior. And then we have Adjectives. That's young, could be more, I don't know, wiry. That's actually probably better, because now yeah, how there would that work for that? I like this better than a simple list. So for a sword, that will be a weapon. Or okay, for a scimitar, be weapon, sword. And adjectives could be rusty. Just rusty, that's fine. We can only have one adjective. And so the thing is, we can definitely say, okay, so if there's another sword, let's do another goblin. There's probably more. Okay, so there's another goblin. So the name is the same. The categories are the same, but the adjective is different. Old, or just old. So storyline at that point can be like, okay, so the young goblin, kicks the old goblin in the shin. I wonder if we need more adjectives than one though, because it's weird to say the wiry goblin. Do we ever need more than one adjective? Yeah, probably not. I mean, this is one of those things where you're trying to do as little as possible. We do need different categories, because the other thing is we can have That's actually, the categories solve a different problem. The categories solve the problem of like always repeating the same name over and over again. Categories can do things like, instead of saying the young goblin, kicks the old goblin in the shin, then I punch the young goblin. I punch the young goblin in the face. And I punch the young goblin in the face, and instead of saying the young goblin or whatever, the goblin falls down, we've just said goblin 4 times. We can say the warrior or the creature falls down. So categories are a way for us to, if it's very safe, if you're not close to any other name of the same category or entity of the same category, like 2 different creatures, then we can use that. So I say categories is like categories P2, and adjectives P1. Okay. High priority. Okie dokie. Let's see. I think we can, I think we could just say that each entity has an adjective now. String get adjective, just one. And the adjective is a way to specify the entity more concretely than with just the name. For example, young goblin or wiry warrior. I don't know why I'm so hung up on wiry. Now I wonder if adjectives should be only allowed for nouns that are not proper. So like, I don't want a young Philip or wiry Aaron. Okay, well, let's see. So this probably made some analysis errors. Yeah. So non-serializable entity has these things. All right. So that will mean final string adjective. Really? And that means that this adjective equals, it can be null. Can it be null? Maybe. Right, so that means that all things and actors in the game now need an adjective. Is that true? Probably. Yeah, unfortunately that must be null sometimes, I guess. So and A adjective is B adjective, return false. And this will now, I'm pretty sure things will throw. Because we added a new thing called adjective, and we only added it to the non-serializable entity, which is not ever used outside tests. Yeah. Well, this is actually, oh, yeah. Yeah, try to construct class body part with null field adjective. Hello, Sachiro. So do we now need to make everything? Okay, let's see who is using entity as a class. Right. So body part, item, and actor are all implementing entity. Anything else? Probably not. So body parts. I wonder. Do we need body parts to have adjectives? Body parts could have adjectives like, I don't know. We could add adjectives like, body parts could have automatic adjectives. Like, if it's completely, that's actually really good. So body parts. String get adjective. Hello. Yeah, that's an override, sir. And basically if hit points is 0, then return disabled. Which to do probably won't work on things like eyes and head. That's fine. If hit points is less than max hit points, then return injured, and otherwise return null. So now we have a thing where if we do need at some point an adjective for like a leg that has been injured, it will say the injured left leg, hopefully. Okay. Cool. So that's body part. Then the other thing that used entity was item. And I'm pretty sure we need to make sure this is a nullable thing. Yeah. So that would be override string get adjective and nullable, please. Okay. And the other thing is we need actors. These. So once again, where's the name? Do we have a name? Yep. So that's the same thing, except it's nullable, and it's a string of adjective. All right. Now maybe only one of the tests fails. I'm not sure. Uh-oh. What? So this works. Okay, something through. So situation, strike down situation. Build value nested field error. Try to build class error situation but nested builder for field move through. Try to construct class move entity with null. Oh, moves also implement entity. This is forbidden. Where's move entity? Move entity. Yep. Almost forgot about that's definitely always override string get adjective is null. Moves should not have adjectives. Okay, let's see what else. Doot doot doot. Come on. Wow. Damn. Is it just no two of them? So this one. Okay, that we failed 2 tests here. Seven five. Oh, okay. Yes, I know why. Because I basically just copy pasted one of the tests. Yeah. Okay. So this one will actually hopefully make work today. Let's actually make this an item. For items. Oh, okay, so 1. Rusty sword is an item. With rusty. Okay, so we need to add objective here. So, wait a minute. To do here. Tests for, you know what, better than to do is a group uses alternate adjectives when needed. And this one is for items. But we'll also have one for actors. And for body parts. Okay, and then these should fail, so expect. Is there a fail? Yeah. Unimplemented. This is a cool way to make sure that you don't forget. If you just put to do, that's never gonna that's never gonna happen. Okay, so if there's 2 sorts and one of them has an adjective, which we still don't have here. String adjective. By the way, this should be required, I think. Adjective is adjective. Oh. All right. I'm pretty sure you can hear this, but that's okay. That's just workers. All right. So we now have adjective here, and this would mean that we have rusty. And that would mean that this should not throw. Storyline add these things, and storyline realizes string should do something like the sort match it. The sort lies next to the rusty sword. Oh, that's terrible. The sword lies next to the rusty sword. Yeah, it basically tells me that if at all possible, all the items should have a unique adjective, right? Because otherwise we'll have things like that, like the goblin punches the young goblin. Yeah. So basically, adjectives should never be null. That's gonna be a breaking change. Ooh. Okay, but first of all, at least let's make this happen. So adjective, the shiny coat, shiny sword, the shiny sword lies next to the rusty sword, and the actual is the sword lies next to the sword. Okay, so that's an improvement. The expected is definitely an improvement. The sword lies next to the rusty sword is less of an improvement. So, okay. We also need to make sure that we don't have false positives. So like when a sword lies next to a dagger, we shouldn't just say the rusty sword. Well, should we? Yeah, if there's only one sword. Okay, test does not use adjectives when not needed. Which would mean that we basically say something like something like this. Rusty knife. Subject lies next to object. Shiny sword, rusty knife. The shiny sword lies next. So the sword lies next to the knife. Right? So we should, so this should actually pass, I think, right now. Because we haven't really done much here. Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this fails because of that. I'm just gonna skip it so it's not in the way. True. This is skipped. This works right now because we don't ever use adjectives. And then this does not work because we never use adjectives. Okay. So now I have tried, I think unconsciously try to, not go in there, but I have to go to actually fix the storyline to use the adjectives when needed. The other thing that's a complication is that we should make sure that these things are used, even if there's two reports next to each other, right? Because I take the sword and I kick the sword is weird. I have to do, I take a sword and I item, okay, so items in one sentence and items in neighboring sentences. So shiny sword and rusty sword. First one is lies on the ground. And the second sentence is rusty sword. Is is on the table, right? And we would want something like the shiny sword lies on the ground. The rusty, I should say one, but whatever. The rusty sword is on the table. We can always make this better. And again, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen all the time. So this should be a group. Should be test items in one sentence. And items in neighboring sentences. Tests. Okay, sword shiny, and this one is a knife, rusty knife. So, yeah, the sword lies on the ground, the knife is on the table. Okay, let's run it again. Yeah, okay, so these pass, none of these pass. Yay! Okay, so now we need some heuristic that says now we need some heuristic that is like, oh, there are two things that are similar, and I guess this will be separate for in one sentence and in neighboring sentences. Yeah. So one of these things, let's substitute. So where is this coming from? Right, yeah, this is one of those long things. Okay, realize. The main function that strings reports together into a coherent story. When only first paragraph is true, this will only realize the first paragraph and will leave the rest of the reports for later. Okay, there's a to-do. So the reports, we clean them, and then has many paragraphs. Okay. Okay, reading code. So I already see how I will try to hold myself from fixing other things that are terrible here. So last end sentence. So now we're going through the different reports in the storyline. The storyline being like a paragraph of text, for example, and it means things like he hit me with a sword, I stabbed him with my knife, and so on and so forth. So flow. Yeah, this seems like a good one. So first we find out, oh, did we, are these sentences the same basically structure, but in one of them the subject is the object in the other one, and the object in the first one is the subject in the other one. Now we're trying to figure out if this is a but sentence. As in, is there a although? And now we're trying to figure out if we should end the previous sentence. Oh. Now we're writing stuff out. We're writing the but and so on. Random report. Right, now we're resolve randomness. So this means that there's we can add more flavor to these things, so that's fine. That should not affect us. Clear subject. No, he has his sword and his shield. Right, this will make he has his sword and his shield into he has his sword and shield. Clear subjects. Wolf hits you, it growls, it strikes again. This will make it into wolf hits you, growls, and strikes again. Now we're substituting. Yeah, I think that's where we are probably going to. Yeah, this is where it's gonna get interesting. If doing something to someone in succession, use pronoun, but not if the pronoun is it for both subject and object. This makes sentences like it makes it. Never show the guards it. Yeah, I think this should just go here, and because avoid sentences like makes it. Okay. Never show the guards it. Yeah, I'm not sure about this. But again, I'm not trying to fix the whole thing. Damn! Are we still on, by the way? Yeah, it looks like it. Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of in the weeds here. Sorry for that. So at some point here, we need to make sure that if there are two things next to each other, it should be probably somewhere in the top, when there are two things next to each other that are like a sword and a knife. I'm sorry, two swords with different adjectives. We do use the adjectives for both of them. Okay, so yeah, let's do this. What? I don't know what that means, but okay. Make sure avoid sentences like the sword is lies next to the sword. So if same name, I and I minus 1, Ooh, this is actually... This is actually, no, this is place where we're trying to make sure... Oh, damn, we need to change things in previous sentences as well, don't we? Yeah, let's focus on the current sentence though. So maybe this is actually... Right. Maybe this is actually not that great. Do we have something here that's just for the current report? Du-du-du-du. Maybe not. We're still in one sentence here. Okay, so do we ever do something to just this sentence here? Get string. Damn, this is terrible. Right. Yeah. I really want to change the name of these. Yeah. Substitute stop words. Can we actually even do that? Looks like we can. And this is of fix flow with previous. Is this right? Yeah, this is basically all previous. Okay, cool. And then fix flow with previous. I think we should just result, return result, and right. Let's see. Let's run these. At least these. This should not make anything worse. So -2, we have 137 should pass, right? Okay, cool. That works for me. So we didn't break anything. Oh, you know what? Let me commit this. Storyline. Stage. Okay, that would say something like name, improve naming in storyline. All right. So I guess we need to do the same thing here for something like this. So we'll have something like report optionally add adjectives. I think the one used in Flutter is maybe add adjectives, and that would be report. And so if so let's just fix this for object and subject for now. So to do this to other then just subject and object. And so we would have something like subject is report. Reports is subject. And object is this. Okay, this is probably the better way to do it. Subject I. Okay, so if subject name equals object name. Then we want to use adjectives for both, which should probably, we could just do it right. We could just do like assert you know what, final A is subject I, final B is object I, and then A name is B name. This will be also better for later extraction. So assert A adjective is not null and B adjective is not null, and then we say something like string result is report. Let's keep the same way of changing text in place. I don't like it, but it's probably the best way forward right now. Something happened with my chat, but otherwise it looks good. So I don't know what's going on. Hello. Disconnected from chat. Okay. Weird. Pop out. Sorry, if you're chatting to me and then I probably don't see it. Sorry about that. Result. I mean, I definitely don't see it. I literally have a blank thing here. Sorry. So result is, and let's just substitute no internet. What? I do hope that you're seeing this. And yeah, I should probably, like, since this is the 10th one, I should probably like rethink how I do this and maybe call my internet company because come on. Okay. So we know that we want to add an adjective here up to both of these. And we know this probably just says subject and object. So replace all subject with that same thing but with the adjective. And then the same here. So result. So object be adjective object. Right? Let's see what that does with my tests. Oh no. The getter name was called or no? Oh, okay. A is not null and B is not null and this. Let's go. Oh, what? Oh, we were rebuilding. Okay, so this works and this does not work. Oh, shiny the... Oh, damn. So what happens is, instead of the shiny sword lies next to the rusty sword, it says shiny the sword lies next to rusty the sword. That's kind of funny, but the problem here is that the is added later. So we probably need to add the adjectives later as well. So, okay, so we need to make subject noun with adjective. And object noun with adjective. Okay. Let's put it somewhere here. Do we ever use subject noun actually? Yeah, we do. Okay. And so coming back here, we basically need to do subject noun with adjective and object noun with adjective. And now this will again throw, and this will not work. This will not work in a different way if I wait until this actually completes. Yeah, because now we have this. Subject noun with adjective lies next to object noun. So now we need to maybe adjectives that substitute stop words. And substitute object. Right, that's just okay. If subject where is the subject noun used? Let's do this. So subject noun. What's this? Add particle to first occurrence. Right, so after this we know that the subject should be subject noun. Here we add an occurrence. Subject noun with subject name. Add particle to first occurrence. adds the or a to first occurrence of substring, like subject in a string, the next occurrences will be automatically converted to the pronouns elsewhere. Okay, the report time should correspond to, okay. So I think what we want to do is add this. Replace first. What? No. Solve particles for subject that needs an adjective. So that would be this probably. Subject noun with adjective. Owner report time. I replace first. And now we can do subject name, subject adjective, and subject name. Okay, that's cool. And then the same thing for objective, right? Object. Replace first object. If object is player, right, so the same thing. Replace the rest with pronouns. All right. Do I have it here? For object that needs an adjective. Okay, so object noun with adjective. Okay, result. So result object first, object owner report time, and replaced first object noun with project adjective with object adjective and object name. Whew, okay, let's see. Oh damn, I didn't wait. Oh yes! Very cool. So this now says the shiny sword lies next to the rusty sword. It does not work for the neighboring sentences yet. It's something that we need to figure out. And it does obviously not work for actors and body parts, but that should be very easy to add actually, just because, yeah, that's fine. So at the very least, we have that. And actually, good timing. This is 11:48. I still don't see any of the any of your chats. Assuming you chat, I don't know. Sorry for that. I will now retire. I will actually have something to eat. So, to summarize a little bit, can I see myself here? Yeah. So what we did is we talked about a little bit about the rendering and about how it's done here and how it's kind of hacky, actually sometimes very hacky, but it's okay for our purposes because we always use the present tense and it's always about some action being done, and we give or put a lot of effort on the shoulders of the writer of the game, or the blurbs and stuff like this. That said, we do have a bunch of logic there that tries to make things looks nicer, and because we have a simulation underlying, we can't always know what's gonna happen and what kind of objects will be in different sentences. So we need to make sure that the the things like two swords in one sentence or two goblins in one sentence are handled well. So now we have this: the shiny sword lies next to the rusty sword, because we know that just saying the sword lies to the sword is not going to help anyone. This will work the same for the goblin, right? And even for things, hopefully today I will get to make it work for things that are in different sentences, like here. The shiny sword lies on the ground, the rusty sword lies on the table. Right. The rusty one lies on the table is actually maybe not that bridge too far. Anyway, so that's one. We also were talking about how it would be cool if the storyline had some categories for these. We did not implement any of those, but that would be nicer. It's not necessary. You can definitely have the young goblin and the old goblin, and the old goblin and the young goblin, and you can go as long as possible. It just like doesn't feel very well written. It would be nicer if we sometimes said, I hit the creature in the face or whatever. We would still probably prefer the name over the category most of the time, but if there was like, the name was used in the previous sentence and we can't use a pronoun safely, then we should use a category, assuming there is no other entity anywhere around here that has the same category. Yeah, it's not gonna be so easy but anyway, so we did that, and from now on, hopefully, and as soon as I actually fix all the things, this should make for a much more interesting and enjoyable play experience, which in the case of eGamebook is also reading experience. So thanks for watching. As always, this will be the next one will be in 14 days. Will it though? I'm not sure. I will let you know. And I'm looking forward to actually connecting to the internet and seeing if someone added any thing to the chat. If you have something, some like ideas on how this should progress, both the stream and the game, you should definitely do that. You can go to gamedev.com, and there's a subscribe here if you don't know, and there's also this press link, which is my email address. So there you go. Cool. Thanks for watching. See you in 14 days.